What is going on, you guys? How are you all doing today? Hope you guys are doing fantastic as always. Today I wanted to kind of go over what are some common issues with the BMW F Series, particularly pertaining to the N55 engine in these cars. Now this can apply to the 335i, 435i, as well as the M235i, as you can see right here. Real quickly, as a disclaimer, I want to make it clear that I'm not a mechanic or a BMW technician by any means. I'm just an enthusiast, just like all you guys that are watching this video right now. And this is just a collection of what I've been reading online through the forums, my personal experience, as well as gathering experiences from people that I know personally that own these cars as well. With that being said, I gotta say, it was actually pretty tough to come up with a list of common issues that these N55s experience on these F-Series BMWs. If you guys have been following this channel for a while, you will know that my previous car was a BMW 335i E92 with the N54 engine, and that car just had a laundry list of issues. It was awesome, it was amazing, don't get me wrong, tons of power potential with that car, but that's not to say that it had its fair share of issues as well. Now, with this M235i, I was presented with the problem of not really finding enough issues that these cars have, and I guess that's a really good thing. And from my personal experience, I gotta say, I've owned this car coming up on 8 months now, just clocked 55,000 miles on the odometer, and I haven't had a single problem with it. So far, fingers crossed, I hope to continue this amazing ownership with this car because it's treated me so well. Let's get right into the issues. The first one being probably the single most common issue that these cars will have is the charge pipe. Now, the N55, the charge pipe, as many of you know, is the final piece of tubing that connects from the intercooler to the throttle body, and it's the last piece where the incoming air goes into the engine that's compressed from the turbocharger. Now, from factory, the charge pipe is made of plastic, so just with high boost, heat cycling, and just wear and tear over time, that plastic is going to experience a lot of stress, and over time, the structural integrity of it is going to degrade, meaning that the plastic itself is very likely to crack, or the charge pipe itself is likely to pop off or blow up from the throttle body. And it's very, very common, even on stock cars that aren't tuned or anything, they have a lot of charge pipe failures as early on as like 15 to 20,000 miles. Some last longer. Somehow mine did not blow up, but regardless, it's pretty important to replace it with an aluminum one just so you don't have to run into that issue, because if it does blow up, well, you'll have a major boost leak and your car goes into limp mode. It's not detrimental, you'll be okay, your car is going to be fine, but it's just something that you want to do preventatively so you don't have to run into that issue. I went with a Burger Motorsport aluminum charge pipe. There's a lot of really good aftermarket solutions to fix this. They're not very expensive, especially on the N55, because the charge pipe doesn't have any diverter valves or anything like that. The charge pipe design itself is not very sophisticated, and if you do plan on modding the car, which I know many of my viewers do plan on doing that, a lot of these aftermarket charge pipes also provide support for methanol injection, so if that's something that you want to run in the future for whatever reason, a charge pipe is definitely beneficial in that regard. The next common issue that these cars have is the oil gaskets. So it is an N55, inline 6 turbocharged engine, makes a lot of power, and with that comes a lot of gaskets that are going to be needed to seal and prevent oil from leaking throughout various parts of the engine bay. First off is going to have to be the oil filter housing gasket. So that is going to be up front in the engine bay, right where you see the oil filter. There's also a cooler gasket because I believe there's an oil and a coolant passage that runs through the housing itself. And you don't want that to start leaking, because if it does, well, over time it's not going to kill your engine, but there is a chance that when the oil drips down, it can actually slip onto the timing belt, and that can actually get sucked into the engine and it'll seize your motor. That's a very rough explanation, let me be clear with that. But it can happen, and you know, if you see oil, or if you know that oil is leaking from the filter housing gasket area, it's a good idea to get that replaced. The next up is going to be the valve cover gasket, which seals the engine block to the valve cover. And with these cars, it is a common issue. It's a lot more common on older models like N54s and early N55s, but with these F-Series cars, really not as problematic. And I don't really think that you're going to have to deal with that until the car gets into higher mileage, probably closer to about 100,000 miles, and the gasket really, its lifespan is going to be shrinking very rapidly. The final gasket would have to be the oil pan gasket, which seals the oil pan to the bottom of the engine block, and that's also a fairly common issue, but again, this is something that happens with high mileage cars, meaning that once you hit about 100,000 miles or even past that, that's when you'll probably start to notice that issue coming up. with the gasket needing to be replaced. And the thing is, with a lot of these F-Series BMWs, most of them haven't really hit that high mileage range. I mean, I know there are some out there that have, but for the most part, they're under 100,000 miles right now. So I think a lot of these engines haven't really gotten to that point yet, or that service interval to where they're gonna need those kinds of servicing, but I guarantee you guys that that is going to be an issue, especially over time. And I wouldn't even really consider it an issue. It's not detrimental to your car again, it's an oil leak. But obviously it's a maintenance ticket or maintenance item that you do want to either preventatively get done, or if you see it happening, you want to get it done because you don't want your car to be leaking oil. It's just not a good thing to have. And those are about the only common issues that these F-Series BMWs have, especially with the N55 engine. Now, I know there are certain cases where things may happen, maybe the water pump might fail, or just something else like with a belt or like a steering rack or something like that. But I'm talking about very common issues that most likely most owners are going to experience. And honestly, those are like the only two things. If you keep this car stock, those are about the only two common issues that I can really think of and that I was really researching off the top of my head. Now, some earlier N55s, especially the pre-EWG or electronic wastegate models, actually had some Valvetronic motor issues as well, which could send the car into limp mode. But for these EWG F-Series cars, that seems to have been an issue which was largely fixed. I'm not saying that it's completely eliminated, but again, I couldn't really read of any cases online or talk to anybody that experienced that problem. Now, the next thing that I want to mention is with tuning. So my car, for example, is tuned. It's basically full bolt-on, so it has all the performance mods like downpipe, exhaust, intake, etc. And there are certain issues that you can run into once these cars get tuned. Again, you need to upgrade the charge pipe if you want to even think about tuning this car, because you will blow the charge pipe up if you don't know what you're doing and you start running higher boosts. The plastic one is just not sufficient at all. So again, that's something that you want to take care of off the bat. If you start running E85 and higher power past like a stage 2 off the shelf tune, it's definitely recommended to upgrade your spark plugs to something like NGKs and make sure you gap them correctly, and go with like one-step colder plugs or something like that, just to account for the added power that you're going to be running, and possibly even upgrade the ignition coils. If you really start to push high power, you can do like a Precision Raceworks ignition coil install, as well as like NGK plugs and something along those lines. But even with a basic tune, you'll be okay. If you start running ethanol blends in this car, so I'm talking about E85, like an E30 blend, even an E40 blend, on the stock fuel pump, on the stock N55, that's about the max that you can run on these cars. And over consistent time, if you're running a custom tune or something like that, it is pretty common to stress out the low pressure fuel pump on this car. And over time, if you're not filling up with the correct amount of ethanol, or if you're running a custom tune that could be, not accounting for the fueling properly, you could be prematurely failing out your low pressure fuel pump, which isn't a super hard replacement, and there's plenty of aftermarket upgrades out there to where you can run durably E85, but it's just another thing to consider. But again, this is all if you want to modify the car. So really not a whole lot of issues again. But again, this is only if you want to mod the car. So if you're planning on just keeping it stock, well, you don't even have to think about those issues, because for the most part, you'll probably never run into them. But a lot of people do want to mod the car, including myself. So it's just important to be responsible and to be aware of what you're getting into and what other potential problems could come up with these cars. But relative to an N54 engine, the N55 is just a blessing in terms of durability. I know it does not have the power potential that an N54 carries, but overall you can still make a lot of good power on these cars, and you can do it reliably, which is just a huge factor for someone like me. That outweighs the super high power potential that an N54 has, especially because this is my daily driver. The N55 itself, as well, is a pretty strong motor. There's no detrimental failures or Achilles heel that this car has. It's not very common at all to spin a rod or to send a hole through the block of the motor unless you're pushing like 600 wheel horsepower. You really don't have to worry about that. Also, the manual and 8-speed ZF automatic transmission on these cars is very, very well built. So in that regard, there's nothing really to worry about with the heart of this car. And the issues, like I said, they're small, they're easily preventable, and easily fixable as well. Anyway, I hope that sheds some light on these F-Series N55 cars. There really isn't a whole lot of issues. but for the most part, they're very well built cars, and I think BMW did a fantastic job with the durability on them. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new here. And with all that being said, I'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy, guys.